to us in John 16:33.
As we face this new day and all it has for us, we find courage and hope in the only trustworthy words available. TullyAdventurers, explore
The Bible.
We're in Matthew 5 today. We're going to be doing the NIV version, verses 1 through 37.
Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder,' and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raka,' is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who's taking you to court. Do it while you're still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. It has been said, 'Anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce.' But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made.' But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one.
That's heavy. So for all the people who think that Jesus was a hippie, all of that in the Bible was in red. We have a poor connection. I don't know if this is going. Could you turn on Twitch and see if it's... And God, please have your way. Thank you for our food. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for all of your blessings. And please help. Because maybe I'm just pushing too hard and trying to make something happen. Make sure you turn down your volume so we don't get a feedback loop. Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're live.
Okay. No, it's okay, and the poor connection is gone, so I just want to make sure that we're still all right. Anyway, that was heavy. That was Matthew 5, verses 1 through 37, and all of those are written in red, which means they're Jesus speaking. And this morning, the reason this one's special is I wanted to speak to something that Jen and I were talking about yesterday. You can see on YouTube, we started Philippians chapter 1. There was a lot of tension yesterday. We were having a lot of struggle as we were talking to each other, trying to get through the thoughts we had about what was going on. And it reminded me of these internal vows, and it's something I'm personally dealing with a lot right now. So the last part that we just listened to was about making oaths. And it's so easy to think that when you make a promise, you make it to someone else, and that's all that a promise is. And we don't think about promises we make to ourselves. So Jimmy Evans does a great teaching on this. I will connect a link in our YouTube channel, so check us out over there. This should be up later today on YouTube. And you can check out his sermon about inner vows. And what it means is, so I don't know if you've said any of these, Jen, but I'll never be poor. I'll never treat my kids the way my parents treated me. I'll never treat a woman the way my mom was treated. I'll never treat my dad the way my dad was treated. I'll never fill in the blank. And we all do it. I know I do. Yesterday I mentioned how my parents got divorced when I was 2. My mom left my dad and took my brother and I with her. And I made a vow to myself that I would never get divorced, because watching the pain and suffering that she went through, I never wanted to go through that. And the problem with the vows we make for ourselves and to ourselves is we're just trying to find some comfort because there's pain and suffering. And the struggle we're going to have in life is that there is trouble, there is suffering. As Jen said in the verse that was part of our introduction, Jesus said, you're going to have trouble in this world. And if you want the upshot of everything that I'm going to say, it's this: Jesus showed us how to accept suffering and still live the best possible life. In the Garden of Gethsemane, before he was about to be crucified, his prayer was, God, if there's any way that you can take this pain from me, this suffering, take it away, because I don't want to go through it. But not my will, but yours be done. I will accept that you are the one who's Lord, and I don't get to decide whether or not I'm going to suffer. And that's heartbreaking, and it's scary, and it's painful, and it's something that I don't want to deal with. I would rather say, God, you're not in control. I get to decide. I'm never going to get divorced. But the problem with that vow I made was, if I'm never going to get divorced, then I'm never going to get married. If I'm never going to get married, then I can never let a dating relationship get too far, because then it will get to that point where I might want to get married. And of course I wanted to get married. Of course I wanted to have a great relationship and a lifelong relationship where I got to grow and I was with someone else and we were helping each other grow. But the fear of what would happen if I got divorced was so much that I wanted to control that pain and that suffering. And so with that as a place that I started from, I went to college and I was called up. I was in the Army. I was called up to go to Iraq. And before I actually left for Iraq, I reconnected with a girl that I dated in high school, and some terrible things happened, and she hurt me very badly. I came home to find out that she was marrying someone else, and all these hopes that I had been dashed. And then to try to find some comfort, I had decided I wasn't going to get divorced, which meant I wasn't going to get married. So to find some comfort, I went out and tried to connect with this girl who I had dated in college. And God is so good that he made a blessing out of this thing that happened, but I had to go through incredible pain. I now have a daughter. She was adopted by a family who are taking care of her, so I don't have any legal rights to her. But God is so good that he allowed me to connect with that family, and I do get to see them, have a relationship with my daughter, and that's amazing. But it's not what I had hoped for growing up, that I would get married, have kids, raise those kids myself. And all of that comes from this internal vow that I made, that I wasn't going to get divorced. And I didn't realize how much it was going to affect my life. But it's caused so much damage and destruction, and stopped me from being willing to even accept relationships. And so then when I came back from Iraq, I had all of these hurts from trying to find comfort and having these women make their decisions that rejected me. So now I had new hurts, and what did I do? I tried to comfort myself again by making another internal vow. I was going to control how much pain I was going to be in. And so I made a vow that I wasn't going to really even let myself connect at all when I was in relationships. I still dated some girls or spent some time with them, but I told myself that we were just friends. I told myself that we weren't, there was no romantic relationship happening. And I have some friends in college who also saw the hurts that happened to their dad, themselves, and with most of those guys, I made jokes about, well, we should just be gay. Let's get married to each other. We'll never have to be disrespected by women again. The jokes that we make are just, we could be gay. And by gay, we mean we're going to live together, and like we're still in college. We're going to, date these women, but just use them, not ever allow the relationship to grow into anything more. We'll tell everyone we're gay, and we'll get married as people who are gay, because that's available in society. We'll be able to use our own money. We'll go out and have a good time as guys who are just being guys. We can hunt and fish and go to ball games and do whatever, and there's not going to be anyone who tells us to do anything differently. We'll never be responsible for kids. We can just have this amazing life that lets us basically stay in a college mindset for the rest of our lives. And that sounds great. That sounds like I will get to control the amount of pain that I'm in, the amount of suffering that I have to go through, because no woman will ever be able to hurt me again the way my mom did, the way these other women have that I tried to be in a relationship with when I really wasn't even available or capable of being in a relationship. And so yesterday, as I was talking with you, I pointed out that the church, by which I meant everyone who follows God, and Jen had a different idea of what the church meant, and so that was part of our struggle. You can check that out in yesterday's video. Once again, that's on YouTube. We were having this problem with every single human being is God's holy and dearly loved child. And so they should be allowed to come to the church and be in the church, and that's true. The problem is we do things, including and most likely as a result of these internal vows that we make it impossible to have relationship. Wherever we have these internal vows, we're saying, God, you don't get to be Lord of this area, and we just go crazy trying to hold on to this vow. If I'm never going to be poor, then I'm going to hold on to control over my money so much that I cannot actually relate to anyone who's going to ask me to do something with my money that I'm not willing to do. In the same way, I wasn't able to have relationships and build even the possibility of marriage because I had made these vows. And now obviously I am married and my wife is amazing, and I'm really grateful that you love me the way you do. But even though I'm married, I still have these internal vows where I'm trying to control how much I'm going to suffer in our relationship. And has it caused damage in our relationship? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I have to surrender these vows. I have to surrender control in these areas. And to even recognize it is difficult because I'm trying so hard to not be in pain and to not allow myself to get hurt. And so as we look at what's happening in our country right now, in the world, in individual relationships, you can see this everywhere. We've all made these vows. The left, in American politics, the people on the left say we'll never allow ourselves to get hurt the way we were hurt by Trump or by this president or this leader or whoever. And so they're just getting so crazy because they feel hurt and they blame it on this person, and now there's this internal vow that says I'm not going to get hurt like that again. On the right, same thing. I'm never going to get hurt again the way that I got hurt by Obama, Clinton, fill in the blanks. And so they're getting crazier and crazier because of this vow. And we all do it. And what's really scary is not only do we do it ourselves, but then we find other people who have similar vows so that we can feel okay about holding on to that vow. And we make friendships and relationships built around, this is my group of people because they're going to let me have this vow and interact with the world based on this vow. And we're all going to be in this echo chamber of, it's okay that we act this way because it's going to protect us from suffering. And so what we need more than anything is Christians who are willing to say, we're going to grieve with you. We're going to admit that it is suffering, it does hurt, it's okay that we're hurting because we're all hurting. And as individuals, Christians meet other individuals and empathize with them and say, I know you're suffering, I know you're hurting, it's okay, everything's going to be okay. And walk through the process of getting them to understand that this is the vow they've made and let go of it because God loves them. And even though God's going to allow some suffering, it's not going to be the end and their destruction. It's actually going to lead to something that's better. And we all know this. When we fail, we have the opportunity to learn and to be better human beings than we have been. And so the whole purpose of the church is to be this place where everyone is invited. You are allowed to come and be part of the church. And while you're in church, you're going to hear about all these things where most likely, at least one of them, you have an inner vow. Because why do we lie? We lie to protect ourselves from suffering. Why do we do any of the actions that are sinful and hurt ourselves and our community? We really believe that it's going to stop our suffering. And what's terrible is, especially with lying, it just means the suffering's going to come, but it's going to come later. And what's even worse about that is you suffer the whole time until you get the punishment. And we all do it, and we're all stuck in it, and we're all crazy holding on to these vows that we've made so that we don't have to suffer. I'll never be like my mom. I'll never be like my dad. I will be like my mom. I will be like my dad. All of these are vows, and some of them sound really good. I will be like this person who's doing something great. I made a vow like that about my pastor. I asked God, please let me have a similar life to him. And the reason was, he traveled all over the world. He connected churches together. Every single year we had a whole week where we had pastors coming in from the Philippines, from Africa, from the UK, from Mexico, from all over the world. And it was an amazing event. And there was just love and joy between people of all different races and colors and ideas and nationalities. And we all loved God, so that's all that mattered. I wanted to be that. I wanted to be that in the place where I grew up. And that I don't get to be that hurts me, and I'm angry with God. God, what am I supposed to do? Why won't you let me do this thing that I want to do? It's for your glory. It's for you. It's me trying to do what would be helpful for you. But that's not accurate. It's just a promise that I made to myself that this is how I'm going to live life. And so, ideally, the church is the place where you get personal empathy. Someone's going to meet you where you're at emotionally, or a group of people are going to meet you where you're at emotionally. But real relationships don't stop there. They don't stop at we just empathize with each other. Real relationships also require compassion, which is accountability. And accountability is not punishment. Accountability is, this is how the world really works. It's okay for you to have these emotions. Your emotions are valid. Your emotions are valid. And this is what is going to happen if you do these certain things just because you have these emotions. It's going to cause damage to people. It's going to cause damage to relationships. It's going to hurt you and leave you lonely. I really appreciate C.S. Lewis's, in his book, The Great Divorce, he paints this picture of hell and what it is. And this is not theologically accurate, so you can debate it all you want. I just appreciate the picture because it's helpful for me. In hell, it looks like the Milky Way galaxy. It's just a bunch of stars out in this dark nothingness. And there's one star that there's a cluster of stars, but they're all kind of moving away from each other. And there's one star that's way out here, and someone says, what's that star that's way out there? And they say it's Hitler. And it's because Hitler wants his way so much that he's willing to destroy all relationships with all people. And we think of Hitler as the worst thing possible, but what are we doing in our own lives that is the same thing? We want our own way. We don't care how it's going to affect other people. Even though we have the best intentions towards them, we have to stop our own suffering. We have to stop our own hurt. And we're just moving away from other people. And if we think in just a human lifetime, what's the big deal about these things? Lying, homosexuality, adultery, divorce, murder. What's the big deal about all of them? They're not that bad. But when you have an eternal perspective and you look at this bigger picture, all of these people are pushing other people away from them. Anyone who doesn't agree with me, anyone who doesn't allow me to control my level of suffering, doesn't get to be part of my life. And at some point, every single human being on this planet is going to, if they come into contact with you for long enough, every single person is going to aggravate that vow that we make. Yes, my love.
One thing that Jimmy Evans said that stuck with me was when you make those vows, it's with good intent, like you said, but it makes you hypersensitive anytime anyone gets near them. It's like it puts the brakes on that relationship right there. Like, nope, I'm going to control this. Anyway, that just really stuck with me. That's why that hurts.
Are you really struggling with this concept right now?
Yeah.
It's really uncomfortable, yeah?
It is.
And that's okay, my love. And that's why I told you before we started that I was going to just talk for a little bit today, and I'm really grateful you're here. And as we've talked about, when I'm praying and being really vulnerable, all you need to say is, yes, Lord, and let him be the one who controls what's happening. But I also know that's really difficult for you, and I really appreciate that right now, as much as you want to empathize with me, you are using your coping mechanisms to let God be the one who's in control of what's happening and not try to grab those things so you can fix them. Yeah. And really, that's one of the... Go ahead.
That has not been my pattern of behavior in my life. My pattern of behavior has been, I'll work harder. I'm the fixer. In fact, that was my nickname at work. Don't know what to do? Ask Jen. She'll know what to do. She'll know how to control the situation. Didn't stop any of the pain. Just made it worse. Because I wasn't in control of the situation, no matter how much I told myself I was. And all I did was waste a lot of energy and time that I could have spent loving people or myself. This is a tough one.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. And that's another heartbreaking part of these vows. We really do have the best intentions. I'm not only going to control how much I get hurt, I'm going to control, me personally, I'm going to control how much my mom gets hurt. I have no control over that. But I'm going to stop her from getting hurt, and then she'll stop hurting me, and then we'll have an even better life. No, I can't control how much my mom gets hurt. I can't control how much my brother gets hurt. I can't control how much my wife gets hurt. And that's horrible. I'm the protector, right? I'm the man in this relationship. I'm the husband. I am going to protect my wife. Even that is an inner vow. And don't get me wrong. The things that I can control, like opening the door for you, or if a man comes towards you in an aggressive manner, stepping up between you, when I'm there, I'll do it. But what am I going to do? Not let you go out of the house without me? That's not going to work out.
No.
I cannot protect you all the time. God is our protector. God is our comfort and strength. God is our ever-present help in times of trouble. And so one of the verses we've memorized is, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. How does that work? Well, we give control to God instead of being afraid of everything. But as soon as we make one internal vow, and I'm sure I have many more than the ones that I've mentioned, but as soon as we make one internal vow, we have to control situations, and then we're afraid at all times of how someone's going to make us break that promise. And if we break that promise, we're a failure. And if we're a failure, and that spirals down really quickly. Really quickly. So the other part of this that I wanted to bring up is how Jesus starts this whole thing. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are willing to grieve, Blessed are those who, instead of trying to control their suffering, have learned how to actually cope with suffering, which is to grieve. I'm grieving the loss of my expectation that I wasn't going to hurt this bad. I'm grieving the loss of my control. Go ahead, my love.
So grieving is really acceptance of the pain.
The end of grief is the acceptance of the pain. Yes.
Because if we're not grieving, we're denying the pain.
Yes.
We're pretending like it doesn't happen. We're trying to control it. But if we accept the pain and then go through the steps, that is going through the steps of grieving.
Right. So you were actually perfectly correct. Grieving is accepting pain. Why is there a process of grief? Because we don't accept pain. What we're talking about here in psychological terms is the bargaining stage of grieving. And we sometimes never get out of it. So we start with, that doesn't deny, we don't all start this way, but one part is denial. It doesn't even hurt me. I'm too tough. That doesn't bother me at all. Then there's anger. This does hurt me. It's not acceptable. It's not okay. It's not right. I deserve to have better.
I have said that.
I don't treat other people this way, so they shouldn't treat me this way. All of that is the anger and the fight. Then there's the bargaining. And bargaining is where we make our internal vows. If I do this, this will never happen again. I'm going to make that deal with myself. And now I'm in control of my suffering. Real grief is the acceptance. Suffering happens. Suffering is going to happen. I don't get to control the amount of suffering that I'm going to experience in this life. There are things that I can do that are going to make my grief less. But I still can't control what's going to happen. Like I said, I'm never going to get divorced. That was a vow I made for myself. Well, here's the problem. If I get married, I put myself in a position where someone else could divorce me. So I could do the right thing. I can get married and have kids and get a house and have a picket fence and have a dog and have the American dream or society's version of the very best life. And at any point, at all points, my spouse is going to hurt me, my kids are going to hurt me, my dog is going to hurt me, I'm going to be annoyed because I have to take care of all of these people. I have responsibility to them now. There's going to be pain involved. So I can do all the right things and there's still suffering. Or I can read the Bible, hear what God's way is, understand it, and say, I'm not going to do any of that, but then how much worse is my suffering? Like I said, when I lie, I'm trying to control the amount of suffering that I get into. But as long as that lie just keeps being okay, I'm suffering because I'm waiting for when are they going to figure it out, and then I'm going to be in trouble. That hurts a lot more. That's a lot more suffering than just, all right, this is what happened. Let's deal with it and deal with the consequences and deal with the punishment and then move on. But we see it play out in every TV show and movie, and all the stories are the reality of what we as human beings do. We do lie. We do get divorced. We do commit murder. And the way Jesus puts it, if you look at your brother in anger, you have murdered him. Why is that? Because you're not mourning. You're not accepting the suffering. You're not accepting that to be in relationship with other human beings means you're going to suffer. Why am I angry at my brother? Because I expected that he was not going to cause me to suffer. He caused me to suffer. Instead of accepting the suffering, instead of grieving, I've decided that I get to be upset. It's not fair that I got treated this way. I would never do that to my brother, and my brother did it to me. I get to get revenge.
And we're extra sensitive to it because there's probably a vow in there.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I should have been able to control this. I couldn't control it. I'm not just mad that my brother hurt me. I'm mad that I let my brother hurt me. As if I have control over how much pain I'm going to be in. So we come to church and we have to hear about, hey, do all these good things. And then we get frustrated and angry at the church because I did all the good things you told me to do and I'm still suffering. The church didn't say you're not going to suffer. In fact, the Bible verse that we read at the beginning of our intro is, in this world you're going to have trouble. What does trouble mean? It means suffering. It means your expectations are not going to get met. It means you're not going to get to control how much suffering you go through. What's the promise, though, at the end of that verse? Take heart, I have overcome the world. And that's said by Jesus. Jesus has overcome the world. How did he do it? He gave God control over the amount of suffering he was going to go through. He grieved well and accepted that suffering. And then he lived the best possible human life that could ever be lived. Because he wasn't trying to control. And so many people hurt him. His closest friends hurt him. His family hurt him. There's a story, and I just thought about this right now. There's this story where he's preaching in his hometown and his mom and brothers and sisters come to tell him to stop preaching. And there's something fascinating about that. Where's his dad? Where's Joseph in all this? Probably working is how we get past it and don't have to think about it. Had Joseph rejected him? Had Joseph loved his brothers more than him? Had Joseph been a better dad to them than to him? The Bible tells us that Jesus has felt all the suffering that we've ever been through. I was hurt by my dad. I felt rejected by my dad. If you're going to tell me Jesus felt that, this is a pretty good story to suggest that maybe Joseph wasn't perfect. Of course he wasn't. He was human. He did the best he could. And it still wasn't good enough. Mary definitely wasn't perfect. We can try to give her sainthood, but she told Jesus to stop preaching. That's a saint?
They left him behind one time.
Right.
They forgot him at a town
Right.
one time.
When he was a kid, they just left him. And the whole caravan's going.
They got a day later and were like, hey, wait.
We haven't seen our son all day. Dee, go to your bed. Lay down.
Where's Jesus? Oh, man.
Down.
And when they got back, they were mad.
Mm-hmm. So, they're making their internal vows. We're going to take care of this kid really well, and we're going to treat him just like every other kid, or whatever their internal vows were, so that they could stop the suffering that would happen from having a child. Well, guess what? Your kids go out and do crazy stuff.
Oh, that reminds me of some vows about kids. I don't want my kids to grow up as poor as I did.
Right.
So I'm going to be so focused on money. And I'm going to give them everything they ask for, because I didn't get anything I asked for. I'm going to give them everything they ask for. And then what happens? Well, we all know what happens. You end up with some very entitled, very spoiled.
Is that what happened to your kids?
No.
Okay.
No. Shoot.
Just clarify. So we're talking in generalities.
Just generalities.
Okay.
No.
But yeah, you're right. I'm with you.
Yeah. I know there's some vows there that I made. I have to sit down and really think about it, because you do it. I have done it so much that I'm not even sure where they are. And I really have to do some soul searching.
Sure.
This has really been weighing heavy on your mind and your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm at a point now, because we've been married for about 5 years, I really have to grow up. I really have to change my life and how I'm interacting with you and with the world and all of it, because there is more suffering than I think is right. But more importantly, if there's more suffering than I think is right, guess what that means?
You have a vow around that.
I'm not accepting the suffering.
Which means you're hypersensitive to it.
And wherever we're hypersensitive, that's where the vow is.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better human being. I want to have better relationships with my friends and other people. And that is going to require me grieving. I want to be blessed because I mourn and get to have the kingdom of heaven. What's the kingdom of heaven? Well, it's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control. I want to live like that. That's who God made me to be. And the only way to be that is to grieve, to mourn, to let go of my idea that I can control how much suffering is going to happen. And especially watching what's happening in America, our country right now, and has been happening for a while, where there's so much hurt and damage and people seem to be going crazy. If we believe what God tells us, then it's because of all these vows that we've made where we're not mourning. We're not grieving. As a country, we need to grieve. And most likely we need to grieve everything that's happened since World War II, and maybe even from the beginning of our country. And that is part of what's happening right now. There's protests of people saying, hey, this is where the suffering was at. There's hurt and heartbreak. This is where the suffering is at. And if we had what they used to call an elder statesman, but really it's a great leader. Great leaders teach us you have to grieve. You have to be willing to let go of control of the amount of suffering. You have to accept the suffering that you get. And that's our alarm to let us know that
Time's up.
it's time to check in with chat, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's okay. We've just started doing this, so it's brand new. Right now we don't have anyone chatting, so we can continue our conversation, but we'd love to have you come be part of what we're doing here. Join us on Twitch so that you can chat with us. We'd love to talk with you if you have questions about what we're talking about, or just to get to chat with you and know how you're doing. But my point was, as a country, if we want to heal, we have to learn how to grieve, and we have to have a great leader who's going to step up and show us how to grieve, how to accept the suffering, how to accept the losses, which sounds so ridiculous because in America, we're the land of the free and the home of the brave. We have independence, we have freedom, we have all of this opportunity to have a great life. How could there be suffering here like there's suffering in, name any other country? Well, the suffering's different. That's all it is. You're suffering because you can't eat. We're suffering because we eat too much. And that's why when Jesus tells us the way is narrow, that, as Stevie Ray Vaughan put it, we're walking a tightrope. It's narrow, it's difficult. Because on the one hand, we make these vows that say, I'm going to control all of this. On the other hand, we say, well, God's totally in control and I don't have to do anything. Both of those are incorrect. There's this narrow way, this tightrope that you have to walk, where you surrender control to God, and then you still do what God asks you to do. And then you live in that turmoil, trusting that God is the one who's going to make it all work out. And then you have to deal with other people who are all falling on either side of the tightrope, and know that you're falling on both sides of the tightrope all the time as well. I am. And that's what life is. And so grieving and grace and forgiveness Why are blessed are those who mourn? Because when you grieve, other people can actually meet you and have relationship and connection. So there's an internal vow I have. I'm going to be a stoic. I'm going to have a stiff upper lip. I'm never going to show anyone that I'm hurt. I'm never going to show anyone that I'm weak. I'm never going to show anyone that my emotions affect me. Why? Because I've seen so many people, I grew up with people who were, their emotional state made them be chaotic. They were doing chaotic things. And it scared me. So I said, I'm never going to be like that. There's another internal vow I have. Well, that's terrible because Jesus wept. When his friend died, he wept. And he was willing to have those emotions and let them be seen by everybody. When he got angry in a righteous anger, he threw over the tables. There were outward ways that he showed emotion. And if he's our example, then there are proper times to cry. There are proper times to let your anger pour out. There's also always grieving, which is accepting suffering. And that's the best part of reading the Bible. That's so confusing. Okay, that means we need to spend more time with Jesus. We need to spend more time seeing what he's actually like and who he actually is. Is there anything you want to add, my love? You've done really good. And thank you for being part of this. All right, folks. That's our time for today. Thank you so much for being here.
Follow and subscribe on Twitch to chat with us.
Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure.
Much love. TullyAdventurers, explore.